Welcome to a familiar corner in Pleasantville. We're here in front of the old rec center on Bedford Road, right at the corner of Great Oak Lane. Great Oak Lane is so named because on this site right here was a fantastic oak tree that cantilevered out across Bedford Road. About 10 years ago, we lost that tree in a hurricane, and the kids of Pleasantville assisted in planting a new tree. So this is the beginning of a new great oak, maybe not great in our generation, but certainly great in future generations. So this building was built in 1896 and 1897, and it opened in 1897 as the Pleasantville Reading Room. The big open space in the middle, which many of you are familiar with, was the ballroom, and then in the back was a small theater. But we're at a crossroads at this point. The building became the library back in 1920, 1925, and for many, many years served the village well as the village library. When the new building was built up the street for the village library in the 60s, the library decanted from this building, moved to their new space, and this building then became the Village Recreation Center, which you continue to see on the porch there. And it served us well as a recreation center for many years. Lots of different activities going on there. But about 2 years ago, we found ourselves at a crossroads with this building. Significant expense associated with maintaining it. As you can see, there are lots of deteriorated pieces of it. And so the building wasn't working very well for the recreation department. We needed to invest a substantial amount of money in the building if we're going to keep it. And so we moved the rec department out of this building, and they now operate out of temporary offices on the third floor of Village Hall, and they have moved their programs to various different places, including the Clinton Street Center as well as the second floor of Village Hall. So we're at a crossroads now with this building about what to do with it and whether it can be sold, and if it could be sold, what it might be used for. So the Village Board has put together a request for proposals, and that we'll talk about a bit more later, but our goal here is to test the market and to see whether there's someone or some group of someones who might buy this building for a zoning compliant use and restore it to its historic condition on the outside, and then adaptively reuse the inside for another purpose. So we'll go on inside and take a look, but as you can see, there are lots of aspects of the building that need some work. Scraping, painting, probably needs new siding, but we've had a building engineer in to look at the building about a year and a half ago and gave us a detailed condition report, and had him come back about 2 weeks ago to update that condition report. And the happy news is that the building is structurally sound. It certainly has lots of work that need to be done, but we're taking some steps at the moment to safeguard the building and make sure that it doesn't deteriorate further, so that whatever its future use may be, we can make sure that this historic piece of Pleasantville gets preserved for the future. We'll head on in. Take a look. It really is one of the great interior spaces in Pleasantville. So when the building was originally built, there were 2 rooms on both sides at the front of the building, and those were the original Pleasantville Reading Room, which was the precursor to the library. As I mentioned, about 20-25 years later, the building was completely converted to library use. But this big central space, the big dome that you see on the outside, is a fantastic roof, really a great historic space. The interior ceiling with this paneled oak ceiling has been a signature place in Pleasantville for a very long time. There's a great newspaper clipping that we'll pull out back at the studio that shows this building when it opened and says something to the effect of, "Hey, Chappaqua, have you got anything as grand as this?" So it's really been a piece of Pleasantville's history for 100 years or more, and we're anxious to see that the building gets preserved and gets used in a new way that maintains its viability. So this big space was originally called the ballroom and was used for meetings and social events and the like. And the arch you see over here with this area that's been filled in below is a kitchen that got built back at the time when the building was converted to rec center use. But it was originally a little proscenium theater with a stage. So you had the reading room in the front, the ballroom in the middle, and then a small stage at the back. And so when events occurred on the stage, you had seating on the floor, which of course has since been replaced with vinyl tile, but the balcony that exists on the other side of the building was also used for additional seating, and people could go up these stairs and have additional seating up there. This space that's been boxed in on the left was built as part of a recreation office, but of course wasn't original to the building. And you can see the kind of detail that went into this building. Over here you see we've lost plaster, and that was really the first piece of the reason that we ended up moving the rec department out. We ended up with some water infiltration through that side of the building and started to lose the plaster. Again, as I mentioned, we've had a building engineer look at it in detail and then come back and update that report, and the building is in sound condition. Certainly needs lots of work. These two small bathrooms that some of you may remember, narrow doors, narrow spaces, were tucked in under the stair at the time the building was converted to a more public use, but those are obviously, they were really too small even for a different era, and they certainly don't come anywhere near fulfilling the ADA requirements that are present today. So at some point the building, if it turns into a private use, would obviously have different bathrooms somewhere else. If it were to remain in a public use, we're confronted with the need to build handicapped accessible bathrooms, and clearly there isn't enough space to do that. So let's walk on up the stairs and you can get a look back from the balconies and get a sense for the character of this interior space. This area up here got boxed in as a storeroom, but was originally the balcony above the proscenium theater. And we can look across now that we're 15 or 18 feet higher than the main floor. You get a sense for this great open space, this vaulted ceiling, and then also the balcony that exists on the other side. Again, all of this built in 1896 and 1897, so it's been here in Pleasantville for more than 110 years. So our goal in all of this, as we have set forth in the request for proposals for potential buyers, is that the exterior of the building would be restored in a historically appropriate way, and we have appended to that RFP the Secretary of the Interior standards for restoration of historic buildings, and have established that as a guideline, so that whoever might buy this building, if in fact we sell it, would be required to maintain it. It would have a deed restriction that requires its preservation and make sure that it can never be torn down. So our goal in all of this would be to find a way to make sure that this building is preserved as a piece of the history of Pleasantville, but also returned to a productive use. At the moment, we're using this building for a variety of dead storage uses. We have always got a storage problem in the village, but we've got some building department files as well as some recreation department things, chairs and tables that we have stored here on a temporary basis, awaiting some resolution of what will happen to this building. But it's an advantage to us to have a place for the stuff, and also it keeps people coming in and out of the building and checking on its condition. It's worth noting that the building has a full basement, and in fact it's a pretty high ceiling basement. Some of you may recall at various points over the last 20 or 30 years the village has tried to turn the one side of the basement into a productive meeting room and a playroom. At one point there were some billiard tables down there. We've had a long-standing problem with water infiltration, and it's been kind of a damp place down there, sort of reminiscent of lots of slightly mildewed 1960s basements. But the interesting thing, as reported by our building engineer who did a detailed report on it, is that he does feel as though it is not all that difficult, with an investment of some money, to waterproof the basement, to put in a proper sump pump and drainage system, and to put in a forced air ventilation system that would turn the basement into a good productive space. So it's really quite a large building with obviously this huge volume of space here, but also a basement which with some investment can turn into a productive space as well. So we're interested in finding out what the market may have to say about what it might be worth and what uses people might put it to, but as mentioned, I think one of our primary goals in all of this is to make sure that this 110-year-old piece of Pleasantville history remains a landmark for this generation and generations to come.